Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to do something that I consider one of the most powerful and most underused and most accessible psychological tools that I ever used. We're going to talk about communicating with your future self. It sounds a little abstract, I know, maybe a little mystical, but stay with me because at the end of this video, I'm going to ground this in psychology and clinical approach called resource building that is used in some of the most respected trauma therapy modalities in the world. And I'm also going to give you a very specific, very practical use for this exercise that I don't really hear people talking much about using it when you are standing at a crossroads, like when you're facing a difficult life decision. So whether you're going through a hard time right now or feeling stuck, whether you're trying to make a really big choice or whether you just want to feel more connected to who you're becoming, this is for you. So let's start from the beginning. Part one. What is the future self exercise? The exercise is simple to describe, but I think it has very good effects. So you close your eyes, you take a few breaths, and then you begin to imagine yourself, but not right now, not in this moment with all its uncertainty, stress. You imagine yourself 1 year from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. But here's the key. You don't imagine just any version of yourself. You imagine the version of yourself who made it, the one who figured it out, the one who is living in a way that feels aligned with your deepest values, your most important goals, your truest self of who you are. So maybe that future self is calmer. In my case, definitely. Maybe they're more confident, or maybe they've built something that they're proud of. Maybe you've healed something that still hurts right now. Maybe they're simply in a peace in a way that feels far away from where you're standing today. So you see this person clearly. You notice how they carry themselves. You notice the look in their eyes, the look of someone who has been through it and come out the other side. And then this is where the magic happens. You let that future self look back at you. So right here, right now, in this exact moment of your life, with everything that's messy and uncertain and unfinished, and you ask, what does that future self want to tell me? What do they know that I can't see yet? What wisdom do they want to offer, knowing everything that's about to unfold? That's it. That's the exercise at its core. Let's talk about why it works, because it's very interesting. Let's go into the brain for a moment, because I think when we understand what's actually happening neurologically when we do this kind of visualization, it changes things. Because it moves this from the category of, oh, a nice idea, into the category of tool I'm going to use seriously. Your brain doesn't clearly distinguish between imagination and reality. This is one of the most fascinating and well-documented findings in neuroscience. When you vividly imagine an experience, when you imagine it with enough sensory detail, enough emotional engagement, your brain activates many of the same neural networks that would fire if the experience were actually happening. The same regions of the prefrontal cortex, the same areas associated with emotion, sensation, the same pattern of activation. So your brain is learning, adapting, and responding even when the experience is only in your mind. When you visualize your successful, peaceful, thriving future self, your brain doesn't just think about it as a pleasant fantasy. On some level, it's beginning to encode that experience as something real, something that is totally possible, something that you know. Here's where it gets even more interesting. There's substantial research showing that dopamine, that we often associate with pleasure and motivation, is released not just when we receive a reward, but when we anticipate one, when we imagine one. And when you are visualizing a future self who has achieved something meaningful, who has arrived somewhere you deeply want to go, your brain is generating that anticipatory signal. That's why it feels good. That's not just, delusion. I think when I dream about something, I get even more pleasure than when it's really happening with me. So there is an important nuance here that the research also shows. Positive visualization alone, what sometimes gets called positive fantasy, where you simply imagine a beautiful future with no connection to the steps it takes to get there, that kind can actually reduce motivation. Because a researcher named Gabrielle Oettingen spent many years studying this and found that pure fantasy, which is disconnected from the reality of the obstacles in front of you, can actually trick the brain into feeling like the goal has already been achieved, which reduces the drive to pursue it. But the future self exercise, when done properly, is not pure fantasy, right? It's not bypassing reality. It's using the perspective of a future self who has walked through the hard parts, who has navigated the obstacles, and who's looking back with wisdom gained from overcoming those obstacles. And that is a very different psychological posture. It combines positive emotion with realistic acknowledgement that the journey exists, and that's a powerful combination. It's our uniquely human ability to project ourselves backward into memory or forward into imagined futures. Research has shown that when people think about their future self, particularly a positive, specific, detailed version of their future, it activates the same neural patterns as thinking about a close other person, someone we know and we care about. And this is significant because it suggests that when the future self feels vague and abstract to us, our brain treats us as almost like a stranger. But when we make it specific and vivid and emotionally real, we start to treat it more like someone we have a relationship with, someone whose well-being we care about, someone we want to do right by. And that changes how we make decisions in the present. So I want to say something about manifestation. Want to pause here and acknowledge that there's a lot of talk in popular culture about manifestation, the idea that if you believe something strongly enough, if you visualize it clearly enough, you will draw it into your life. So I'm not going to make metaphysical claims. What I will say is that there's a real psychological and neurological support for the idea that our internal representations of the future shape our attention, our choices, and our behavior in the present in very concrete ways. When you have a vivid, emotionally resonant image of who you're becoming, the part of your brain that acts as a filter in a way, deciding what to pay attention to out of the enormous amount of information coming at you at every moment, begins to orient towards things that are consistent with that image. Opportunities that you would have filtered out become visible. Patterns you weren't noticing before suddenly stand out. And this is the brain doing what it was built to do, scanning the environment for what's relevant to your goals and your sense of self. So whether or not you believe in manifestation in a spiritual sense, the psychological case for visualization is strong and it's well supported. I want to close by saying something that I feel strongly about. We live in a culture that tends to focus on the present moment or on rehearsing our fears about the future and catastrophizing. We scroll, we stay in this survival mode, and sometimes we forget that we are in motion, that we are on a journey, that who we are right now is not the final word on who we're going to be. The future self exercise is an antidote to that forgetting. It's a way of reconnecting to the larger arc of your own story. Like remembering that this moment, as hard as it might be, is part of something that's moving forward. And that version of you, that future self, is not a fantasy. It's a possibility that lives in you right now. It's you on your best path, in your most authentic becoming. When you communicate with that future self, you're not escaping the present, but you're bringing something essential from the future back into the present with you. And you get more trust that you're going to be okay. And that's resource building. That's what it means to cultivate this inner capacity as foundation, something to stand on when the ground feels uncertain. And groundlessness is one of the main characteristics of living. We're living on a planet that moves all the time. So I hope you try this exercise. I hope you come back to it, and I hope that you find a version of yourself that fills you with more hope for the journey ahead. Thank you so much for being here with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.